History's greatest secrets might be hidden in plain sight. Ancient cultures across the globe left behind stories that sound less like myths and more like instructions for navigating time itself. By the end of this journey, you will discover 25 startling legends that suggest our ancestors possessed a profound understanding of temporal travel, knowledge we are only beginning to rediscover today. We will explore how Hindu sages described cosmic cycles spanning billions of years and why Celtic druids gathered at stone circles during specific celestial events. What do you believe is our greatest limitation in understanding time? Ancient Hindu texts describe a universe breathing in and out through vast, repeating cycles of time. These are the Yuga cycles, cosmic ages that span billions of our years, each with its own distinct character and conclusion. Time is not a straight line moving from past to future in this worldview. It is a great wheel turning endlessly through creation, preservation, and dissolution. The Puranas, those ancient repositories of myth and knowledge, detail these immense periods known as kalpas. A single kalpa is a day in the life of the creator god Brahma, a period so long that it makes human history seem like a single blink. Within these kalpas unfold the manvantaras, eras where the world is not merely repopulated but entirely recreated, down to its very laws and realities. Each manvantara is presided over by a new progenitor, a Manu, who establishes a fresh blueprint for existence. This concept of cyclical destruction and rebirth is not about simple repetition. It suggests a profound understanding of temporal patterns, a recognition that time itself has a rhythm and a structure that can be known. If ancient sages could comprehend the scale of these cycles, did they also believe it was possible to navigate them? The idea that history repeats itself in these grand arcs implies that the future is, in a sense, already written in the past. This opens a startling possibility. Advanced beings, those legendary rishis or enlightened ones, might not be bound by the turning of the wheel. Their knowledge of the cosmic pattern could have granted them the ultimate freedom, the ability to step outside the cycle or move consciously between the ages, witnessing the rise and fall of worlds as we might watch the seasons change. The Mahabharata presents a story that reads like a direct case study of time dilation. King Kakudmi, seeking a suitable husband for his daughter, Revati, traveled to the higher realms to consult with the creator god Brahma himself. A celestial performance was underway in Brahma's court, and Kakudmi waited politely for it to end before making his request. When he finally did, Brahma laughed gently, explaining that in the brief time they had been conversing, 27 cycles of 4 yugas had already passed on earth. Generations of mortals had lived and died. The king returned to his kingdom to find his city in ruins, his entire lineage and civilization long since turned to dust and memory. This is not merely a fable about patience. It is a precise description of time flowing at radically different rates in different planes of existence, a concept that would not be formally proposed in the West until the theory of relativity. The ancient texts frame this not as a scientific theory, but as a lived reality for those who could access these higher realms. This idea is echoed in the concept of Brahma's own day and night. A single day for Brahma lasts for 4,320,000,000 of our human years. His entire lifespan covers a time scale so vast it defies human comprehension. The scriptures insist that time is not a universal constant. It is a fluid experience dependent entirely on your state of consciousness and your location within the cosmic hierarchy. Modern physicists speak of gravitational time dilation, where time slows down near a massive object like a black hole. The ancient sages, it seems, described a similar principle in spiritual terms. They spoke of realms where consciousness itself was the massive object, warping the fabric of time around it. Could their advanced meditative states have allowed them to perceive or even journey through these temporal currents? The stories suggest they did not just understand time was relative, they possessed a map of its contours. Yet the idea of navigating time was not unique to the sages of India. Deep within the tombs of the pharaohs, another civilization encoded its own temporal secrets. The Egyptian Book of Gates presents the soul's perilous journey not as a simple path to the afterlife, but as a voyage through 12 distinct hours of the night. In this sacred funerary text, the sun god Ra does not merely disappear beneath the horizon. His solar bark travels through a segmented underworld, a realm of 12 divisions, and in each cavernous hour, the very flow of time is different. The text meticulously describes the inhabitants and challenges of each gateway, suggesting that to pass through is to cross a threshold into an entirely new temporal reality. This was not a linear progression. It was a series of transitions where the rules of existence shifted with every gate the god and the soul had to unlock. The gates themselves are the central mystery. They were not physical doors, but powerful symbols for portals between states of being. Each gate was guarded by a unique set of deities and serpents, entities that demanded specific knowledge or incantations to allow passage. This implies that moving through time was an act requiring precise spiritual navigation, a coded sequence that, if followed correctly, could grant access to realms where past, present, and future converged. Egyptian high priests believed they could access these temporal gates through elaborate ritual and deep meditative trance. They were not simply praying for a safe journey after death. They were actively attempting to replicate the journey of Ra in their own consciousness, using sacred geometry, rhythmic chanting, and controlled breathing to alter their perception of time itself. Imagine a priest in the confines of a temple, his mind focused on the image of the first gate. Through his practice, he seeks to slow his own heartbeat and thoughts to match the described temporal rhythm of that first underworld hour. If successful, he might perceive flashes of the past or echoes of future events, all while his physical body remains in the present. This was a sophisticated technology of the mind, a belief system where time was a layered landscape to be traversed by the trained soul. It suggests the Egyptians saw the universe as a series of interlocking temporal zones, and that human consciousness, properly prepared, could become a key to move between them. What knowledge might they have sought in those other hours of the night? Across the ocean, the Maya built a civilization where time itself was the ultimate architecture. Their calendars were not just for marking days, but for mapping the breadth of the cosmos. The most famous of these, the long count, was a complex mechanism of interlocking cycles that tracked time over periods so vast they dwarfed individual human lives. It counted forward from a mythical starting point, a day zero that scholars equate with August 11th, 3114 before Common Era. This grand cycle was designed to complete itself after a period of approximately 5,125 years, a date that famously aligned with the December 21st, 2012 in our modern calendar. This completion sparked a global frenzy, with many interpreting it as a prophecy of the world's end, but the Maya themselves likely saw it very differently. For them, this was not an end but a turning. Their mythology spoke of successive world ages, each one created and then dissolved before the next could begin. The completion of one long count cycle signaled the end of one great age of humanity and the birth of the next. Time did not stop, it reset, offering a new beginning, a fresh iteration of civilization. This concept of cyclical world ages mirrors the Hindu Yugas and suggests a shared, ancient insight into the very structure of temporal existence. The Maya were not predicting apocalypse. They were documenting a recurring cosmic rhythm, a pulse they had observed and calculated with breathtaking precision. How did they achieve such accuracy? Their astronomical observations were so advanced that they could predict planetary movements and solar eclipses centuries in advance. This was not mere stargazing. It was a deep, empirical study of celestial mechanics, which they saw as the visible clockwork of time. The movements of Venus, the Sun, and the Moon were the gears in a great celestial engine, and by tracking them, the Maya believed they could anticipate the shifts in the quality of time itself. Modern researchers see this not as superstition, but as evidence of a profound temporal understanding. The calendar's precision implies the Maya viewed time as a quantifiable, rhythmic force with distinct properties in different cycles. A king would not schedule a war or a coronation on just any day. He would consult the calendar priests to find a moment when the flow of time was auspicious, when the cosmic currents favored his endeavor. This treats time not as a blank slate, but as a landscape with hills and valleys, with periods of turbulence and periods of calm. The completion of the long count, then, would have been seen as the peak of the highest mountain, a moment of maximum potential where one entire temporal landscape gave way to another. It was a portal between world ages. Could their advanced knowledge have been an attempt not just to predict these shifts, but to navigate them? To step from one dying age into the next newborn one, carrying the wisdom of the past into the future. This idea of conscious navigation through cyclical time connects the Maya directly to the Vedic sages and the Egyptian priests, forming a thread of ancient knowledge that spans the globe. Far from the stone calendars of the Maya, another ancient culture understood time not as a cycle, but as a single, eternal now. The Australian Aboriginal concept of Dreamtime reveals a universe where all moments exist simultaneously. This is not a linear history, but a vast, interconnected landscape of ancestral events, a dimension where the past is continually present and the future is already laid out. Dreamtime is the foundation of all reality, a timeless realm where the ancestor spirits sang the world into existence, leaving their creative energy embedded in the land itself. For Aboriginal people, to walk across the desert is to traverse this living memory, every rock and waterhole a testament to an event that is not locked in the past, but vibrantly alive in the perpetual present. This worldview completely dissolves the Western idea of a straight timeline. There is no arrow of time here, only a deep, abiding connection to a reality where every when is accessible. How does one navigate such a timeless landscape? Aboriginal elders speak of accessing the dreaming through deep ritual, rhythmic song, and focused meditation. They do not seek to predict the future in a conventional sense. Instead, they quiet their minds to listen to the dreaming, to perceive the patterns and events that are always there, just outside ordinary perception. In this state, an elder might gain knowledge of a coming drought, the location of a lost person, or the outcome of a community decision. This is not prophecy. It is more akin to tuning a radio to a frequency where all broadcasts are playing at once, and learning to distinguish the specific signal you need. Among the most compelling figures in this tradition are the clever men, individuals of profound spiritual training. Their abilities are the stuff of legend, and many accounts describe them manipulating the very fabric of time and space to perform incredible feats. There are well-documented stories of these men traveling hundreds of miles in a single night, appearing to be in two places at once, or communicating across vast distances instantaneously. From a Western perspective, this sounds like magic, but from within the Dreamtime worldview, it makes perfect sense. If all points in space and time are connected in the dreaming, then a clever man is not traversing a physical distance. He is using his deep connection to that timeless realm to fold the landscape, to step from one point to another by moving through the dreaming itself. It is a form of travel that bypasses linear time entirely. One elder might describe knowing a relative has died hours before the news could possibly arrive by conventional means. He would explain that in the dreaming, the event had already occurred and his spirit simply perceived it. This indigenous knowledge system presents a radical challenge to the linear, progressive model of time that dominates modern thought. It suggests that our perception of time as a one-way river is merely a construct, a useful illusion for navigating daily life, but not the ultimate truth of the cosmos. The Aboriginal understanding implies that consciousness, when properly aligned, can operate outside this illusion, accessing a state where the distinctions between past, present, and future are meaningless. This is not a primitive belief. It is a sophisticated philosophical and spiritual model that aligns surprisingly well with certain interpretations of quantum physics, where the observer influences reality and all potential outcomes exist in a state of superposition. The clever men of Australia were not breaking the laws of physics. They were, according to their traditions, operating by a different set of rules entirely, the rules of the dreaming. Their feats suggest that the human mind, in its deepest states, might hold a key to unlocking dimensions of reality where time is not a barrier but a doorway. The Norse envisioned the cosmos not as separate worlds, but as one immense tree whose roots and branches were different streams of time. Yggdrasil, the world ash, holds 9 distinct realms in its embrace. Asgard, the home of the gods, and Midgard, the world of humanity, do not exist in the same temporal flow. A day in the shimmering halls of the gods might pass as a year or even a generation in the mortal realm below. This is not a simple map of geography, but a diagram of layered realities where each realm ticks to the beat of a different cosmic clock. Moving between them, as the gods were said to do across the Bifrost Bridge, would inherently be a journey through time as much as through space. The very structure of their universe was a temporal network. At the base of this great tree sit the 3 Norns, ancient and powerful beings who govern destiny itself. They are not passive observers of a fixed future. They are constantly weaving the threads of fate on a vast loom, their work encompassing all that was, is, and will be all at once. For them, past, present, and future are not a sequence. They are a single, interconnected tapestry. They see the seedling, the mighty tree, and the rotting stump as one complete image. This suggests a profound Norse belief that time is not linear, but a complex, interwoven whole, and that certain beings possess the perception to see its entire pattern. The gods themselves were not omniscient. They hungered for this very knowledge. Odin, the All-Father, made a terrible sacrifice to gain a sip from Mimir's well, a spring of primordial wisdom located beneath one of Yggdrasil's roots. He gave up one of his own eyes to drink from its waters. What did he gain in return? The myths say he received not just knowledge, but foresight and understanding that spanned across the ages. He saw the threads the Norns were weaving. This was not a simple transaction. It was an initiation into a higher state of temporal awareness. Odin traded a part of his physical perception for a cosmic one, learning to see the world through the lens of eternity rather than the fleeting present. This hard-won knowledge, however, came with a heavy price, for what Odin saw most clearly was Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Ragnarok is often described as a final, destructive battle, an apocalypse. But in the deeper Norse cosmology, it is something far more complex, a necessary and cyclical recalibration of time itself. The world, consumed by fire and flood, does not end permanently. It is cleansed and reborn, emerging fresh and green from the waters, with a new generation of gods and 2 human survivors to repopulate the world. This is not an end, but a reset, a great turning of the wheel that echoes the cyclical time of the Maya and the Hindus. The death of Odin and the other major gods is a preordained part of this cycle, a fate they cannot avoid but can prepare for, precisely because Odin looked into the well of time. The Norse mythos presents a universe where time is both a structured hierarchy of realms and a single, knowable fabric. It teaches that the flow of time can be navigated, its secrets unlocked through immense sacrifice, and that even the most catastrophic endings are merely gateways to new beginnings. This world sees destruction and creation as 2 sides of the same coin, forever spinning in the hands of fate. While the Norse gods sought wisdom from a well, Chinese sages sought it within the very flow of time. Taoist legends speak of the Zion, immortals who achieved a state of being so harmonious with the cosmos that they could manipulate time itself. These were not gods born with divine power, but humans who, through profound spiritual and alchemical practices, learned to step outside the relentless current of the years. Their goal was not merely to live forever, but to exist in a state of timeless awareness where the boundaries of past and future dissolved into an eternal present. The ancient text known as the Zhuangzi presents a world where such mastery was possible. It tells of a great master who could sleep, and in his dreams his spirit would travel for an entire season, yet he would awake to find only a single afternoon had passed in the waking world. This is not a fantasy about dreaming, it is a precise description of conscious time compression, the ability to experience a vast duration within a fleeting moment. The text suggests these masters achieved this through deep meditation, aligning their internal rhythm with the fundamental pulse of the Tao, the underlying principle of the universe. By stilling the heart and mind, they could effectively slow their personal time to a crawl, allowing their consciousness to journey for what felt like years while their body aged only minutes. A more direct illustration of this temporal relativity is the famous story of the Peach Festival. In this celestial tale, a humble woodcutter named Wang Zhai stumbles upon a grove where immortals are feasting. He watches their game of chess for what feels like a single day, only to return to his village and find that centuries have passed. His axe handle has rotted to dust and everyone he knew is long dead. This story is a perfect parallel to the Hindu tale of King Kakudmi, yet it emerges from a completely different culture. It reinforces the idea that different planes of existence, whether the heavenly realms of the gods or the hidden groves of the immortals, operate on a separate temporal clock. Time was not one single river, but a network of streams, all flowing at different speeds. The pursuit of this state drove the practices of Chinese alchemists for generations. They were not simply mixing potions in a vain search for endless life. Their quest was for a golden elixir, a substance that would catalyze a fundamental transformation within the practitioner. This was alchemy of the body and spirit, a process of refinement where the coarse, time-bound human form was gradually transmuted into a luminous, subtle body capable of navigating these temporal streams. The successful alchemist did not just stop aging, he gained the ability to move through time as freely as a fish moves through water. He could compress an hour into a second or expand a single breath into a meditation lasting 1,000 years. This was the ultimate freedom, liberation from the tyranny of the clock and the calendar. The legends suggest these adepts could appear in multiple eras, offering guidance or performing miracles, their actions rippling across the centuries. They were not bound by cause and effect, but could operate from a vantage point outside the linear flow, seeing the entire tapestry of history as a single, beautiful image. Their existence poses a haunting question. If a human consciousness can achieve such a state, then is time truly a prison, or is it merely a training ground? High on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, a sacred fissure in the earth breathed strange vapors that were said to open a window to all of time. This was the heart of the Oracle of Delphi, where a single priestess, the Pythia, would sit upon a tripod cauldron, inhale the potent gases rising from the rock, and speak with the voice of the god Apollo. Her prophecies were not simple guesses. They were detailed, often riddling visions that shaped the destiny of nations, and the Greeks believed she could peer directly through the veil separating the present from the future. Kings and commoners alike made the arduous pilgrimage, seeking answers that transcended their own limited moment in history. They asked not what would happen tomorrow, but what fate held for their city-states generations down the line. The accuracy of some of these pronouncements is startling. Croesus, the famously wealthy king of Lydia, tested oracles across the ancient world, asking what he would be doing on a specific day. Only the Pythia at Delphi gave the precise and bizarrely correct answer that he would be cooking a tortoise and a lamb in a brass pot. She later gave him a more monumental prophecy, warning that if he attacked the Persian Empire, he would destroy a great kingdom. He did, but the kingdom he destroyed was his own. Another prophecy, given centuries in advance, foretold that the son of the mortal woman Alcmene would be born and rule over all the descendants of Perseus. This was understood to refer to Heracles, whose legendary labors would define Greek heroism for all time. How could a woman in a trance state see events with such clarity across the centuries? Modern geology offers a compelling clue. Excavations at the site have revealed that the temple was built directly over two geological fault lines, which allowed for the release of ethylene, a sweet-smelling gas known to produce trances, euphoria, and out-of-body experiences. For the ancient Greeks, this was the divine pneuma, the breath of the earth god Python whom Apollo had slain. For a modern neurologist, it is a psychoactive substance that dramatically alters brain function. Under its influence, the Pythia's normal consciousness, bound by linear time, was suppressed. Her mind entered a liminal state where the brain's internal timekeeper lost its rhythm, where the sequential order of past, present, and future could collapse into a single, overwhelming vision. This was not magic in the fairy tale sense. It was a neurological phenomenon harnessed for a sacred purpose. The Greeks understood that the gateway to foresight was a form of controlled madness, a temporary shattering of the rational mind. The priestess did not deduce the future. She experienced it as a sensory flood, a tapestry of images and feelings from across the timeline that she then translated into words, often in a frenzied state. The famous ambiguity of her prophecies might be explained by this very process. The human brain, even in an altered state, struggles to interpret the raw data of a timeless reality into the clean, linear narrative that our waking minds demand. The message becomes a riddle because the vision itself is a mosaic of possibilities, not a single, fixed track. The Oracle of Delphi stands as a powerful testament to an ancient belief that the future is not a blank page, but a landscape that can be perceived from a high enough vantage point. It suggests that time, in its fullness, already exists, and that the right key, whether a geological gas or a profound spiritual technique, can unlock a door and let a little of its light spill through. Stonehenge stands silent on the English plain, its massive stones arranged not just to mark the sun's path, but perhaps to open a door within it. Celtic Druids saw the world as a living tapestry where certain places pulsed with immense power. These locations, often marked by stone circles, springs, or ancient oaks, were not merely sacred. They were considered thin places where the barrier between our world and the other world grew fragile. The Druids, as the learned philosophers and spiritual guides of their people, were said to possess the knowledge to manipulate these weak spots in reality itself. They understood that these portals were not always open. Their access was governed by the slow, grand dance of the heavens. During a solstice sunrise, when the first light pierced precisely between two towering megaliths, or on a night when the moon reached its peak, the alignment of stone and star was believed to twist the threads of time, creating a temporary gateway. A druid, standing at the exact center of the circle at that precise celestial moment, might not just be honoring a god. He might be stepping across a threshold into another age. This was a sophisticated science of space-time, encoded in myth and monument. It suggests the Druids viewed the cosmic calendar not as a simple farmer's almanac, but as a key to unlocking different layers of temporal reality. The most compelling evidence for this belief lies in the legendary life of Merlin. This archetypal wizard, deeply rooted in Celtic lore, is often described as living his life backward. He experienced time in reverse, aware of future events as memories and the past as a yet unwritten page. This was not a simple magical quirk. It was a profound state of being, a conscious disengagement from the linear flow that bound ordinary mortals. Legends say Merlin gained this ability through his deep connection to the ancient, sentient landscape of Britain itself. He could sleep within a crystal cave or stand within a stone circle and emerge having traversed centuries. His backward aging symbolizes a complete mastery over temporal forces, an ability to navigate the river of time against its current. This concept of temporal thinning was also woven into the very fabric of the Celtic year. Their great festivals, like Samhain, marked on the eve of November 1st, were not just about honoring the dead. They were moments of cosmic vulnerability when the veil separating all worlds, including those of different times, grew thin enough to pass through. On Samhain night, the barriers between past, present, and future were believed to dissolve. It was a night when the spirits of ancestors were not just remembered but potentially encountered. A traveler might wander into a mist and find themselves witnessing a battle from 1,000 years prior, or catch a glimpse of a future harvest yet unplanted. The Druids conducted their most profound rituals during these times, not only to communicate with spirits, but to consciously journey along the tangled roots of the world tree where all times are connected. They saw the universe as a great, interwoven system where specific moments and specific places could resonate together, creating a harmonic that allowed for passage. What knowledge were they seeking in these other eras? Were they retrieving lost wisdom from the past or gathering intelligence from the future to guide their people in the present? The silent stones hold their secrets, but the legends whisper of a people who knew time as a landscape to be walked, not a prison to be endured. The Babylonians looked to the heavens and saw a vast ticking clock. Their civilization was built upon the banks of the Euphrates, but its true foundation was a profound belief that the movements of the stars and planets were the visible gears of destiny. They developed a system of celestial observation so precise that it allowed them to predict the paths of Venus and the Moon with an accuracy that would not be rivaled for millennia. This was not mere astronomy for its own sake. It was a sacred science dedicated to decoding the messages written in the sky. They believed the cosmos was a divine script, and by learning to read its patterns, they could anticipate the flow of time itself. The true power of their knowledge is preserved in a series of 70 clay tablets known as the Enuma Anu Enlil. These were not simple star charts, they were a comprehensive manual of celestial omens, meticulously linking specific astronomical events with prophesied outcomes on Earth. If Jupiter stood in a certain position relative to the Moon, it might foretell the rise of a powerful king. An eclipse could predict the death of a monarch or the outbreak of a plague. The priests of Babylon saw a direct, unbreakable thread connecting the cosmic and the terrestrial, believing that every shift in the heavens pulled on the strings of human fate. Their mathematical genius was the key that unlocked this celestial code. They developed advanced arithmetic and algebraic techniques to track the complex cycles of the planets over breathtakingly long periods. They calculated the repeating patterns of Venus with such skill that they could forecast its appearances centuries into the future. This long-term perspective was crucial. It revealed that time was not a series of random events, but a grand repeating cycle. The stars, in their view, contained the entire blueprint of time, a pre-written scroll of all that had been and all that would be. A Babylonian priest-astronomer, watching the steady, predictable dance of the night sky, would have felt he was reading from a book where the final chapter was already complete. His role was to interpret the current page for his king, to warn of coming famines or to promise military victories based on the celestial signs. This worldview creates a staggering implication. If the future is already inscribed in the motion of the stars, then is free will an illusion? Or did the Babylonians believe that by reading the blueprint, they could somehow alter the construction? Their entire culture was an attempt to harmonize with this cosmic timetable, to align human action with the inevitable currents of time. They sought not to change the future, but to navigate it, using the stars as their map through the river of destiny. This intricate dance between cosmic determinism and human interpretation reveals a civilization that saw time as a structured, knowable force, a vast mechanism whose secrets could be mastered by the learned and the devout. Plato's Atlantis was more than a sunken kingdom. It was a civilization operating on principles that defy our understanding of time. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he does not simply describe a wealthy island empire. He details a society of profound technological and spiritual advancement, one that ultimately fell out of sync with the world. The story came to him from the Athenian lawgiver Solon, who heard it from Egyptian priests in the city of Sais. These priests spoke of a great power that existed 9,000 years before their time, an Atlantean civilization that wielded energies and machines far beyond even classical Greek imagination. The heart of their power, according to Plato, lay in a mysterious metal called orichalcum, which gleamed with the fire of the sun, and in a central energy source that some theorists believe was not merely electrical but temporal. The Atlanteans did not just build grand canals and concentric rings of land and water. They constructed an entire society around a central power crystal, a great pillar of energy that sustained their world. When this crystal was misused or damaged, the legends say it caused colossal earthquakes and floods that swallowed the island in a single day and night of misfortune. Could this have been a catastrophic failure of a technology designed not just for power, but for navigating the flow of time itself? The crystal at the center of their power grid is the key to this tantalizing mystery. Plato's description of a radiant central pillar that channeled the energy of the earth sounds less like a simple generator and more like a theoretical time crystal, a structure that operates in a state of non-equilibrium, repeating its cycle indefinitely without expending energy. In modern physics, time crystals are phases of matter that break time translation symmetry, meaning they have an order that repeats in time, not just in space. An Atlantean power source based on such a principle would not just produce light or heat. It could potentially create a stable, localized distortion in the temporal field, a bubble where time flowed at a different rate. This would explain the legendary longevity of the Atlanteans and their alleged ability to communicate or interact with other epochs. Their downfall, then, might not have been divine punishment for hubris, but a physical rupture in this delicate temporal machinery. A fracture in their great crystal could have unleashed uncontrollable temporal forces, violently re-syncing the island with the normal flow of time, a process so destructive it literally tore the continent apart. The enduring fascination with Atlantis among time travel theorists stems from this very idea, that it represents a lost peak of human achievement where the boundary between science and magic was blurred. They see in Plato's account not a mere moral fable, but a fragmented technical manual, a warning from a forgotten age about the immense responsibility that comes with mastering time itself. High in the Himalayas, Tibetan Buddhism presents a map of consciousness where death is not an end, but a doorway into a fluid landscape of time. This is the bardo, the in-between state that follows physical death and precedes the next rebirth. In this transitional realm, the rigid structures of linear time dissolve completely. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, known more accurately as the Bardo Thodol, is not a book of morbid prophecies. It is a precise manual read aloud to the deceased, a set of navigational instructions for traversing this bewildering temporal terrain. It describes a journey through various bardos, each with its own distorted sense of duration, where a single moment can stretch into an aeon or collapse into an instant, all depending on the state of the consciousness experiencing it. The text guides the departed through visions of peaceful and wrathful deities, which are not external gods but projections of the mind's own deepest layers, appearing in a reality where past karma and future potential collide in a chaotic, ever-shifting present. For the unprepared, this is a terrifying limbo, a hall of mirrors where time loops and twists, but for the trained practitioner, the bardo is a field of immense opportunity. Through a lifetime of dedicated meditation, a master learns to maintain unbroken awareness through the process of dying. He recognizes the luminous visions of the bardo for what they are, mere appearances in the mind, and thus remains undisturbed by the temporal chaos. This conscious recognition grants him control. He is no longer a passenger swept along by the currents of between time. he becomes the captain of his own ship, able to navigate deliberately through these non-linear states. The ultimate goal is to achieve liberation from the cycle of rebirth entirely, to step out of time altogether. But the intermediate achievements are just as staggering. There are countless accounts of Tibetan yogis, like the legendary Milarepa, demonstrating powers that defy conventional physics. He was known to appear to multiple disciples in distant locations at the exact same moment, offering teachings tailored to each individual. From a bardo perspective, this is not a feat of moving through space, but of manipulating the very fabric of spacetime from a vantage point outside its linear flow. For a consciousness operating from within the bardo's timeless awareness, all locations and all moments are equally accessible, like points on a single sheet of paper. A master simply chooses to manifest his presence at several points simultaneously, his awareness no longer confined to a single, sequential timeline. These stories are not presented as metaphorical miracles, but as documented evidence of a perfected human potential. They suggest that our normal experience of time is a construct, a convenient agreement that keeps our consciousness anchored in a shared reality. The Bardo teachings reveal this agreement is temporary and can be consciously dissolved, first in meditation and ultimately in the state following death. They propose that time is not a river carrying us helplessly forward, but a vast ocean where all currents exist at once, and that the deepest forms of spiritual practice are, in essence, training for how to swim in its depths. What would it mean to live your life with the certain knowledge that the barriers of time are, for the enlightened mind, ultimately transparent? A young Lakota hunter leaves his village, climbing into the sacred Black Hills alone. He carries no food, no water, only a prayer. For 4 days and nights he will fast and wait, seeking a vision that will define his life's purpose. This is a vision quest, a ritual found across many Native American nations, but its purpose runs far deeper than personal guidance. It is a deliberate, disciplined method for stepping outside the river of linear time. The seeker, through physical deprivation and intense spiritual focus, aims to thin the veil between the world of the everyday and the timeless world of spirit. In this altered state, the visions that come are not mere dreams. They are journeys, encounters with ancestral spirits who exist in a perpetual present, or glimpses of events yet to unfold. The shaman, the community's spiritual navigator, undergoes even more intense versions of these quests, using rhythmic drumming that mimics the heartbeat of the earth, sacred songs passed down through generations, and in some traditions, carefully prepared plant medicines. The shaman's consciousness is untethered from the body. He does not travel through space so much as through time itself, moving along the coiled threads of past, present, and future that are woven together in the great circle of existence. His goal is to retrieve lost knowledge, diagnose the spiritual roots of an illness that began in a past conflict, or see the long-term consequences of a tribal decision. This is not fantasy, it is a sophisticated technology of the mind, built on the foundational belief that time is not a line but a hoop. Many tribes, from the Lakota to the Navajo, hold this view of cyclical time. Life, seasons, and history itself are seen as moving in a great circle where every end contains a new beginning. This is why their oral histories do not simply recount the past. They are living narratives that speak directly to the present and offer guidance for the future. The Hopi people of the American Southwest embody this principle with stunning clarity. Their prophecies, carved into rock and preserved through oral tradition for centuries, describe the coming of a gourd of ashes that would fall from the sky, bringing great devastation. Long before the first atomic bomb was detonated, the Hopi elders knew of this terrible weapon. They also spoke of a great spider web that would be built around the earth, a web through which people could see and speak to one another across vast distances. We now call this the Internet. How could a people living in the high desert have foreseen such specific technological marvels? From the linear time perspective, it seems impossible. But from within the circular view, the answer is simple. the future is not a separate, distant land. It is another point on the same sacred hoop, already connected to the present and the past. The prophets and shamans, in their deepest states of perception, were not predicting. They were perceiving a reality that already exists, just on a different part of the circle. They were reading the entire pattern of the hoop from their own point upon it. When a shaman returns from a vision quest with a message for the people, he is not guessing what might be. He is reporting what he has witnessed on his journey along the timeless path. This understanding transforms the vision quest from a personal rite of passage into a communal tool for temporal navigation. It suggests that the human spirit, when properly prepared, can access a vantage point from which all time is one, and that the prophecies of old were not warnings of a fixed fate, but maps of the hoop's terrain, offered so that we might walk the circle with wisdom. The smoke that rose over Alexandria carried more than just the ashes of parchment. It may have erased humanity's first great blueprint for understanding time. The legendary Library of Alexandria was not merely a repository of scrolls. It was the intellectual heart of the ancient world, a place where the greatest minds pooled knowledge from Babylon, India, Persia, and Greece. Among its countless volumes, historians believe there existed entire sections dedicated to concepts of time that were far more advanced than we might imagine. Visitors to the library wrote of strange mechanical devices, not just water clocks, but intricate spheres of bronze and glass that modeled the motions of the planets against a backdrop of fixed stars, suggesting an early attempt to visualize the cosmos as a single, functioning clockwork. These were not simple calendars, they were potential models of spacetime itself. The genius of the scholars who worked there is undeniable. Eratosthenes, the chief librarian, not only knew the Earth was round, he calculated its circumference with an error of less than 2% using little more than a stick, the sun, and his own brilliant reasoning. If he could achieve such a feat with basic geometry, what staggering truths about the nature of time might he and his colleagues have uncovered with the library's full resources at their disposal? There are accounts, often dismissed as legend, of special collections that held texts on chronomancy, the art of divining or influencing time. These texts were said to describe not magic spells but physical principles, the idea that time could have a current, an ebb and flow like the tide, and that certain architectural alignments or resonant frequencies could allow a person to ride that current. The library might have held the works of thinkers who viewed time as a spatial dimension, a concept that would not re-emerge in the West for over 1,000 years. Its destruction was not a single event but a series of fires and conflicts that unfolded over centuries, each one gnawing away at this vast repository. With each lost scroll, a thread of understanding was severed. Perhaps there was a treatise explaining the Babylonian celestial omens not as superstition, but as a science of temporal probability. Maybe there was a text from India that detailed the physiological effects of meditation on human perception of duration, explaining how a yogi could experience a lifetime in a single moment of samadhi. The loss is incalculable. We are left with fragments, with echoes in later philosophies, wondering if the knowledge that went up in flames held the key to seeing time not as a mystery, but as a territory that could be mapped and perhaps one day navigated. While the Library of Alexandria smoldered, a different flame burned eternally in the temples of ancient Persia, guarded by a priestly class who saw the stars as a map of destiny. The Magi were far more than wise men from a nativity story. They were the master astronomers and spiritual scientists of their age, a class so proficient in reading the cosmos that they were believed to navigate the currents of time itself. Their worldview was built upon the Zoroastrian vision of a universe locked in a great cosmic struggle between light and darkness, a drama that played out across a vast linear timeline. Unlike the endless cycles of the Hindus or Maya, Zoroastrian time had a definite beginning, a long middle, and a final, triumphant conclusion known as the Frashokriti, the final renovation of the universe. In this ultimate future, all of creation would be perfected, evil would be utterly defeated, and time itself would achieve its purpose. This was not a random apocalypse, but a destined, noble event, and the Magi saw their role as preparing the world for its arrival. Their profound knowledge of astronomy was the key to this preparation. They meticulously charted the movements of stars and planets, believing that the celestial sphere was not just a beautiful display, but the visible clockwork counting down to this cosmic renewal. Legends suggest their understanding went beyond mere prediction. It is said that by calculating the precise alignments of specific stars, they could identify moments of immense temporal flux, windows where the membrane between the present and the destined future grew thin. During these rare celestial convergences, a high magus might perform a complex ritual at the exact apex of a fire temple, using the sacred flames as a lens to focus consciousness. The goal was not to change the unchangeable frashokrati, but to peer down the corridor of linear time and glimpse the specific events that would lead to it. They sought to understand the path of the future so they could better align their society with its inevitable current. Their fire temples were far more than places of worship, they were sophisticated temporal observatories. Designed with precise astronomical alignments, their central altars were positioned so that the light from the eternal flames would interact with sunlight or starlight, entering through specific apertures during solstices or equinoxes. At these potent moments, the entire structure became a kind of instrument, a device to amplify a priest's perception and allow his mind to sync with the relentless, linear march of cosmic time. Imagine a magus standing in the heart of such a temple as the dawn of the spring equinox illuminates the inner sanctum. The converging light from the sun and the sacred fire creates a blinding point of focus. In that heightened state, achieved through ritual and deep knowledge, he was believed to be able to step outside the narrow confines of the present moment. He might perceive the rise and fall of empires yet to be born, or receive a symbolic vision of a future king whose actions would shift the balance between light and dark. This was their sacred science, a fusion of precise astronomy and spiritual discipline aimed at navigating the river of linear time, not to escape its flow, but to understand its destination and steer their civilization toward the ultimate victory of light. The epic of Gilgamesh echoes with a king's desperate footsteps across time itself. In humanity's oldest written story, the mighty Gilgamesh does not merely travel to distant lands, he journeys across the lifespan of the world, seeking an answer to the one question that haunts all mortals. His quest for immortality is not a simple search for a magic plant, but a profound voyage through different states of temporal reality, a narrative that some see as an ancient map of time travel. After the death of his beloved friend Enkidu, Gilgamesh is shattered, confronting his own mortality with a terrifying clarity. He abandons his throne and sets out to find Utnapishtim, the one man granted eternal life by the gods. His path takes him through the tunnel of the sun, a dark passage where the sun travels each night, a place where the very laws of day and night are inverted. This is not a normal cave, it is a liminal space where the hero must run against the sun's own course, a symbolic journey backward through the cycles of time, emerging into a garden of gemstone trees that exist outside the normal flow of the seasons. This entire sequence reads like a description of entering a different temporal zone, a reality where the progression of hours and years operates by a different set of rules. When Gilgamesh finally finds Utnapishtim, the flood survivor lives in a state of timelessness. Utnapishtim and his wife are not young, they are ancient, having witnessed the destruction and rebirth of humanity. They possess knowledge that spans ages, a living memory of a world that is gone. They exist in a bubble of eternal life, a place where the Great Flood is not a distant myth but a personal memory, and where the present moment stretches out indefinitely. Gilgamesh's interaction with this timeless being is a direct encounter with a consciousness that has transcended the linear human experience of time. Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to prove his worthiness for immortality by staying awake for 7 days and 7 nights. Gilgamesh fails immediately, falling into a deep sleep. When he awakes, he denies he slept, but Utnapishtim shows him the proof, the progressively stale loaves of bread baked each day he slumbered. This is a powerful depiction of time dilation, a subjective experience where Gilgamesh felt only a moment had passed, while objective, measurable time had moved forward for days. He experienced a disconnect between his personal timeline and the timeline of the world around him, a phenomenon central to modern time travel theory. His ultimate failure to bring the plant of rejuvenation back to his city underscores the epic's tragic wisdom. True immortality, the kind that allows one to move freely across the ages, may not lie in a physical object, but in a state of being that Gilgamesh, in all his mortal grief, could not attain. His journey, however, leaves us with a haunting possibility. The epic may be more than a poem about accepting death. It could be a record of an ancient understanding that time is not one river, but many, and that the greatest human quest is to learn how to navigate their currents. Ancient Sanskrit texts describe Vimanas not merely as flying chariots, but as vehicles capable of manipulating reality itself. Within the epic Mahabharata, there are startling accounts of these craft deploying weapons that seem to shatter the conventional flow of time. One passage details the use of the Brahmastra, a weapon that produced a pillar of fire brighter than 10,000 suns, a blast so powerful it caused metals to melt and the unborn to perish in their mothers' wombs. Survivors found their hair and nails falling out, and the very land became poisoned for generations. This reads less like a simple explosion and more like a catastrophic release of temporal energy, a violent resetting of the local timeline that inflicted damage across generations in a single moment. Another weapon, the Narayanastra, is described as creating an illusion of countless gods descending from the sky to attack the enemy. Modern researchers interpreting these verses suggest this was not a simple hallucination, but a projection of potential futures or past battles, a weapon that attacked the mind by flooding it with realities from other times. The Vimana itself, according to texts like the Samrangana Sutradhara, was said to be powered by motive forces contained in specially constructed vessels, allowing it to move invisibly, travel vast distances instantly, and even ascend vertically into the heavens. Could such instantaneous travel and invisibility be descriptions of a craft entering a different temporal stream, moving outside the observable timeline? Proponents of this theory point to descriptions of Vimanas being constructed from special metals that absorbed light and energy, suggesting a technology designed to interact with the fundamental forces of spacetime. They argue these are not mythological exaggerations, but fragmented technical accounts of a lost science where flight and time travel were intertwined. Mainstream archaeology and history uniformly dismiss these interpretations as anachronistic, insisting that the passages are poetic metaphors for royal power or allegories for spiritual ascension. They caution against imposing modern scientific concepts onto ancient philosophical and religious poetry, arguing there is no physical evidence of engines or advanced machinery from that era. The debate itself reveals a fascinating cultural divide. One side sees myth as a corrupted record of literal technology, while the other sees it as a profound but purely symbolic exploration of human consciousness. Yet the question remains haunting. If our ancestors were simply using imaginative language, why did they choose to describe effects that so closely mirror the consequences of temporal and nuclear physics, concepts that would only be formally understood thousands of years later? The Vimana legends challenge us to consider whether the boundary between magic and technology is as solid as we believe, or if it is merely a line drawn by our own limited understanding of time. The massive stone faces of Easter Island stare inland from the coast, their silent gaze holding a secret that echoes across the water. Local legends say the first people did not arrive here by simple canoe. They emerged from a sunken continent called Hiva, a lost land that vanished beneath the waves, forcing their ancestors to flee through a portal of mist and memory. This was not a normal migration. It was a journey born of catastrophe, a displacement not just in space but potentially in time. The stories suggest the original settlers carried with them the knowledge of a fallen world, a wisdom that informed their new and isolated society. Cut off from the rest of humanity, the Rapa Nui culture developed in a unique temporal bubble, a pocket of reality where the past was a living, breathing presence embodied in the very stones they quarried. The island itself became a world unto itself, and its people, the architects of the Moai, may have cultivated an understanding of time as cyclical and immediate, where the ancestors were not gone, but merely existing on a different plane, one the living could potentially access. This belief finds its most fascinating expression in the Birdman cult centered at Orongo. Each year, competitors would risk their lives scaling sheer cliffs to retrieve the first sooty-tern egg of the season from a treacherous islet. The winner was not just crowned a chief for the year, he was believed to become the living embodiment of the creator god Makemake. This was more than a political contest, it was a profound temporal ritual. The act of retrieving the egg from the edge of the world and bringing it back to the community symbolized a rebirth, a resetting of the annual cycle, and a direct connection to the creative forces of the beginning of time. Some theorists propose that the ritual was designed to harness this moment of renewal, a point where the barrier between the present and the mythic past was thinnest. The competitors, in their extreme physical and spiritual state, might have been seeking more than an egg. They could have been attempting to tap into the ancestral knowledge of Hiva itself, to pull wisdom from a lost time into their present reality. The Moai statues, with their backs to the ocean, may not have been turning away from the world but acting as anchors. Their immense weight and precise placement along the coast could have been a way to ground the island's unique temporal frequency, to prevent their small world from slipping further out of sync with the main flow of history. Their construction required moving multi-ton stones across miles of rugged terrain, a feat that seems to defy logic. Could they have used a form of sonic levitation or a forgotten science of manipulating gravitational fields, techniques that also subtly warped the local passage of time? The ultimate collapse of this society, marked by toppled statues and ecological decline, might then be seen not just as a resource crisis, but as a failure to maintain this delicate temporal balance. The silence that fell over the island is a haunting reminder of a culture that may have understood time not as a river to be sailed, but as a shore to be shaped. The philosopher's stone was never truly about gold. For the master alchemists of medieval Europe and the Middle East, this legendary substance represented the ultimate key to unlocking time's deepest secrets. Their cryptic texts, filled with images of dragons, Ouroboros serpents, and the Rebis, were not merely recipes for metallurgy, they were intricate maps for a spiritual and temporal journey. The magnum opus, the great work, was a process of personal transformation so profound it was said to grant the adept access to the elixir of life, a potion that could halt aging indefinitely. This was not a simple desire for a long life, but a quest for temporal immortality, the ability to exist outside the relentless current that sweeps all mortals toward decay and death. An alchemist in his laboratory, carefully tending his furnace and observing the color changes in his alembic, was conducting an experiment on the very fabric of duration. He believed the transformation of base lead into perfect gold mirrored his own inner transformation from a time-bound mortal into a timeless being, a true son of Hermes who could walk through the ages. Their manuscripts are a labyrinth of intentional deception and profound truth. References to the green lion devouring the sun or the flying eagle could be interpreted as chemical processes, but they also hold a deeper, coded meaning related to the compression and expansion of temporal perception. The alchemists sought to create a stone that was not a stone, a catalyst that would operate not just on matter, but on time itself. When a text speaks of a substance that can coagulate the volatile and volatilize the fixed, it may be describing a theoretical state where the fluid nature of time becomes solid and manipulable. Modern theoretical physics finds startling echoes in these ancient pursuits. The alchemical concept of the prima materia, the formless base substance from which all creation arises, bears a curious resemblance to the quantum vacuum state, a seething sea of potential from which particles and energy spontaneously emerge. Alchemists wrote of solving the mystery of the one thing, the single principle underlying all reality. Today, physicists search for a grand unified theory, a single equation to describe the forces of the universe, including time. The quest to create a philosopher's stone, a localized object that defies entropy and transforms the nature of reality around it, conceptually parallels the search for exotic matter with negative energy density, a theoretical substance that could stabilize a wormhole and make traversable timelines a possibility. The alchemists may have expressed their insights through the symbolic language of their age, using images of kings and queens, dragons and phoenixes, but the underlying goal resonates with a very modern ambition. They sought to become masters of time, not through force, but through a sublime understanding of its inherent connection to consciousness and matter. Their failed experiments in turning lead to gold were perhaps just the visible symptoms of a much grander, more elusive failure, or perhaps a partial success we are only now beginning to comprehend. Massive stones across the globe point not just to the sky, but to the very rhythm of time itself. Structures like Stonehenge, Newgrange, and the Great Pyramids were far more than tombs or temples. They were colossal calendars engineered with a precision that defies their ancient origins. Their builders encoded a deep understanding of celestial mechanics into granite and limestone, creating permanent observatories to track the slow, grand dance of the heavens. At Newgrange in Ireland, a 5,000-year-old passage tomb is designed so that on the winter solstice, a single shaft of sunlight pierces the inner darkness, illuminating a sacred chamber for just 17 minutes. This was not a random event, it was a meticulously calculated moment, a way to mark the sun's rebirth and the turning of the year with stone and light. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned to the cardinal points with an accuracy of within 1/15th of a single degree, an engineering feat that seems almost impossible for its time. These alignments were not for navigation, they were for marking time on a scale that dwarfs human lifespans, tracking cycles that unfold over 26,000 years. The central theory is that these sites functioned as terrestrial anchors, giant clocks that synchronized human consciousness with the cosmos. By physically marking the solstices, equinoxes, and even the precession of the equinoxes, the builders created a fixed grid on the Earth that reflected the moving grid of the stars. This allowed priest astronomers to not only tell the time of year, but to anticipate the quality of time in vast, repeating cycles known as the Great Year. Some researchers propose this was more than simple observation. The specific geometries and materials of these sites, particularly their use of crystalline stone like granite, might have been designed to interact with the Earth's own energy fields. Could these megalithic structures have been tuned, like a tuning fork, to resonate with specific planetary frequencies? The idea is that by creating a harmonic resonance between the Earth and the cosmos at these powerful nodes, the ancients believed they could stabilize the flow of time or even create portals where temporal boundaries grew thin. During a solstice sunrise at Stonehenge, when the heel stone aligns perfectly with the rising sun, it may have been seen as a moment when the door between worlds opened. A druid or shaman standing at the center of the circle was not just watching a sunrise, they were positioned at the apex of a temporal convergence, a point where past, present, and future were believed to briefly overlap. These sites mark significant points in cosmic time cycles, acting as permanent signposts on a journey through ages. The sheer effort required to build them suggests their function was absolutely vital to the worldview of their creators. They were not built for a single generation, but for countless generations to come, serving as a stable reference point in a universe of constant celestial motion. They stand as a silent testament to a lost science that saw time as a structured, knowable force and humanity as an active participant in its great turning wheel. For centuries, European maps marked distant lands with the legend of a kingdom ruled by a priest-king who defied time itself. The legend of Prester John spoke of a realm of such wonders that it seemed to exist in a different age entirely. A Christian empire hidden somewhere beyond the lands of Islam, filled with marvels that bent the rules of reality. His domain was said to contain a fountain that restored youth to the aged, its waters reversing the flow of a person's life as easily as one might turn an hourglass. Travelers' accounts, passed down and embellished for over 300 years, described crystals that showed events from across the world and mirrors that revealed the future, suggesting a society that possessed not just advanced technology, but a masterful understanding of time's secrets. This was not a simple fairy tale. It was a persistent and detailed narrative of a land where time's arrow did not point in only one direction, a temporal sanctuary preserving wisdom lost to the rest of the world. The myth became a powerful driving force for exploration, sending navigators and conquerors across deserts and oceans in a quest to find this kingdom and its timeless knowledge. They were not merely seeking an ally against Muslim powers or new trade routes. They were searching for a gateway to a different kind of existence, a place where the ravages of time could be healed and ancient truths recovered. The failure to find Prester John's physical kingdom did little to diminish the legend's power, for its true location may have always been temporal, not geographical. It represented humanity's enduring hope that somewhere, a doorway out of the relentless present remains open, waiting for the right moment or the right person to step through. Deep within the frozen Himalayas lies a legend of a kingdom untouched by our relentless timeline. Shambhala, a name whispered in both Tibetan and Hindu traditions, is described not as a lost city, but as a hidden temporal realm. It is said to exist in a state of purity, concealed behind a veil of mist and mountains, where time itself flows at a different, more serene pace. The inhabitants of this sanctuary are not merely long-lived, they are advanced beings who have mastered the currents of time, possessing a unified knowledge of all past ages and future possibilities. They watch our world from their secluded valley, waiting for a moment of global darkness to emerge and guide humanity into a new golden age. This is not a myth of escape, but one of preservation, a belief that a complete record of time is being kept safe from the cycles of destruction that sweep across our world. The most compelling evidence for this profound temporal understanding comes from the Kalachakra Tantra, a complex system of teachings that is said to have originated in Shambhala itself. Kalachakra translates to the wheel of time, and it presents a breathtakingly sophisticated cosmology where the outer cycles of planets and stars are mirrored by the inner cycles of breath and energy within the human body. This teaching maps out vast cosmic time cycles with mathematical precision, but its ultimate goal is to show an individual how to achieve liberation by synchronizing their own inner rhythm with the great wheel itself. It is a spiritual technology for achieving a state of timeless awareness, for stepping out of the turning wheel and into the still center where all time converges. Modern theorists, struck by the parallels to quantum physics and interdimensional concepts, propose that Shambhala is less a physical place on a map and more a different vibration of reality. They suggest it could be an interdimensional sanctuary, a pocket dimension where the passage of time is consciously controlled by its inhabitants. In this view, the kingdom is hidden not behind physical mountains, but behind a dimensional barrier, accessible only to those who can adjust their consciousness to its unique frequency. The legends say one cannot force their way into Shambhala through physical travel alone. The path opens only through spiritual merit and a purified heart. This aligns perfectly with the idea that moving through time is not an engineering problem, but a shift in consciousness. The Hidden Kingdom represents the ultimate temporal sanctuary, a library of ages preserving the knowledge of past civilizations and the potential futures that branch out from our present decisions. It stands as a powerful symbol of hope, suggesting that even as our own world struggles with the linear march of history, a timeless wisdom is being held in trust, waiting for the moment we are ready to receive it. Long before we had equations for relativity, the Greek philosophers were dissecting time with the sharp blade of logic. Zeno of Elea crafted puzzles that have confounded thinkers for 2,500 years, not to provide answers, but to expose the baffling nature of motion and duration themselves. His most famous paradox, Achilles and the tortoise, presents a race where the swift hero gives the slow animal a head start. To overtake the tortoise, Achilles must first reach the point where it began. But by the time he gets there, the tortoise has moved forward a little. Achilles must then reach that new point, and again the tortoise has advanced. This process, Zeno argued, repeats infinitely. Achilles is forever catching up to where the tortoise was, but never actually passing it. This seems absurd, yet the logic appears flawless. The paradox forces us to confront a terrifying idea, that time and space might be infinitely divisible, composed of an endless series of moments or points. If that is true, then how does any motion, any progression through time ever actually occur? Zeno was pointing toward a fundamental discontinuity in our perception of a continuous flow. His arguments suggest that the smooth river of time we experience might be an illusion, masking a reality of countless frozen instants. This ancient grappling with the quantum nature of motion prefigures modern physics, where the fabric of spacetime itself may be granular at the smallest scales. While Zeno argued for a static, unchanging reality, his contemporary Heraclitus proclaimed the exact opposite. He famously stated that no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river and he is not the same man. Heraclitus saw the universe as a state of constant, dynamic flux. Everything is always in the process of becoming something else. This philosophy places change at the very heart of temporal existence. Time is not a series of distinct snapshots, but a relentless, flowing fire that transforms all it touches. His vision presents time not as a container in which events happen, but as the very process of change itself. If Heraclitus is correct, then the past has no solid existence. It has already flowed away and been replaced by the new. This creates a profound challenge for any concept of time travel. If you were to journey to the past, what would you find? Not a stable, frozen moment, but a reality that has already ceased to be, a river that has already flowed on. You would be attempting to step into a fire that has already burned out. These two opposing views, the frozen river of Zeno and the flowing fire of Heraclitus, set the stage for Aristotle, who would synthesize the ideas into the most comprehensive theory of time the ancient world would ever produce. He defined time as the measured aspect of change relative to a before and an after. For Aristotle, time does not exist independently. It is a measurement of motion and alteration in the universe. Without change, there is no time. A person in a state of perfect, dreamless sleep, where no change is perceived, experiences no time. This directly connects the passage of time to consciousness and observation, an idea that resonates deeply with certain interpretations of quantum mechanics. Aristotle meticulously dissected the concepts of potentiality and actuality, exploring how the future holds potential states that become actualized in the present and fixed in the past. This framework creates the very structure for the classic time travel paradoxes we know today. Consider the grandfather paradox, where a traveler goes back in time and prevents his own grandfather from meeting his grandmother. If he succeeds, he would never be born, so he could never have gone back to commit the act. Aristotle's logic of potentiality and actuality would see this as an impossible contradiction. a violation of the fundamental principle that what is actual in the past cannot be made potential again. The past, once actualized, is fixed. The potential for the traveler to intervene simply would not exist within a coherent timeline. The Greeks, with no technology beyond pure reason, mapped the logical boundaries of temporal travel. They established the philosophical bedrock upon which all later speculation would be built, realizing that to master time, one must first understand the nature of change itself and the mind that perceives it. 19th century explorers pieced together a legend of a sunken world more ancient than Atlantis. Augustus Le Plongeon, a pioneering Mayanist, claimed to have deciphered ancient texts at Chichen Itza that spoke of a lost continent called Mu in the Pacific Ocean. His translations described a sophisticated civilization, the mother culture of all humanity, which possessed a profound wisdom regarding the natural laws of the universe, including the manipulation of time itself. According to Le Plongeon, the people of Mu understood time as a tangible energy field, a current they could harness and navigate. Their society was not destroyed by a simple earthquake or flood, but by a catastrophic failure of their temporal technology, a miscalculation that caused their entire continent to fall out of sync with our timeline and vanish beneath the waves. This was not just a geological disaster, it was a temporal collapse, an event that erased them from our history while leaving echoes in myths across the globe. The story of Mu shares a striking pattern with other lost civilization legends. Like Atlantis, it is described as a source of advanced knowledge. Like the Hindu concept of prior Yugas, it speaks of a golden age that ended in a great flood. These recurring themes of a fallen, technologically and spiritually advanced society suggest a deep, perhaps instinctual, human memory of a time before time, a world that operated by rules we have since forgotten. Mainstream archaeology and geology uniformly reject the existence of Mu. Scholars point out that Le Plongeon's translations are now considered fanciful and incorrect, and that there is no geological evidence for a continent sinking in the mid-Pacific. They argue that the plate tectonics of the Pacific Basin do not support such an event, and that these myths are better understood as allegories for cultural collapse or the universal human fear of disaster. For alternative researchers, however, the dismissal is too swift. They ask why so many disparate cultures, from the Maya to the inhabitants of India and even some Pacific islands, share stories of a lost homeland to the east. They see in the legend of Mu not a literal, physical continent, but a potential temporal civilization, a culture that achieved a state of existence so advanced it could phase in and out of our dimensional reality. In this view, the continent did not sink into the ocean. It slipped into a different vibrational frequency, becoming a ghost in the timeline, its influence occasionally bleeding through into our myths and dreams. The enduring power of Mu lies in this tantalizing possibility that our past may hold not just forgotten kings and cities, but entire worlds that mastered time itself, leaving only their shadow on the waters of our collective memory. A flawless quartz crystal skull can seem to hold entire worlds within its depths. These enigmatic artifacts, often attributed to ancient Mesoamerican cultures like the Maya or Aztec, are said to be far more than artistic relics. Legends claim they are sophisticated devices, capable of acting as scrying tools that allow a trained psychic to view events across the vast expanse of time. According to the lore, a high priest or shaman, by meditating deeply while gazing into the skull's crystalline structure, could perceive scenes from the distant past or potential futures. The skull was believed to focus and amplify human consciousness, acting as a lens to bend time itself, transforming the solid quartz into a shimmering window to other ages. Some stories even suggest that a set of 13 original skulls, when brought together, would unlock their full power, revealing the entire history and destiny of humanity. This powerful narrative taps directly into our fascination with lost civilizations possessing knowledge we have since forgotten, a technology that blended crystal science with the untapped potential of the mind. The romantic origin story, however, collides with modern scientific scrutiny. When the most famous crystal skulls, such as the Mitchell-Hedges skull, were subjected to rigorous analysis, a different tale emerged. Microscopic examination revealed tool marks consistent with modern jewelers' wheels and polishing abrasives, technologies that did not exist in the pre-Columbian Americas. The quartz itself, while natural, showed no signs of the hand-carving techniques that would have been used by ancient Mesoamerican artisans. Instead of being thousands of years old, the evidence points to their creation in 19th century Europe, likely in German workshops that specialized in supplying a growing market for exotic antiquities. They were beautiful fakes born from an era of archaeological fascination and manufactured mystery. Yet the myth of the crystal skulls remains stubbornly alive. Why does this idea persist long after science has presented its case? The answer lies in the powerful human longing they represent. A perfectly carved crystal skull is an object of undeniable mystery and beauty. Its very form, a human skull rendered in a luminous, transparent material, symbolizes a bridge between the mortal and the eternal, the physical and the spiritual. It embodies the tantalizing possibility that our ancestors discovered a way to crystallize time itself, to capture the flow of years in a solid object that we can hold in our hands. The scientific debunking, for many, fails to extinguish this deeper allure. The skulls serve as a physical anchor for a profound belief that the key to unlocking time may not lie in complex machinery, but in the intricate relationship between consciousness and the crystalline structures of the earth. They remind us that some mysteries are not solved by facts alone, but are kept alive by our enduring hope that the past holds secrets far more wondrous than we have yet dared to believe. Ezekiel's vision began not with a whisper but with a storm. A great wind from the north, a colossal cloud flashing with fire, and within it, the appearance of 4 living creatures, each with 4 faces and 4 wings. Their movements were precise and synchronized, and beside them, wheels within wheels, their rims covered in eyes, moved in any direction without turning. This was not a simple dream, it was a technological vision, a glimpse of a divine machinery operating on principles far beyond human understanding. Ezekiel saw a throne of lapis lazuli, and upon it, a figure with the appearance of a man glowing like molten metal. From this being, he received scrolls containing lamentations and woes, messages for a future Israel that had not yet fallen. His experience reads like a direct download of information from a source outside the linear timeline, a consciousness that sees all of history laid out like a map. How could a man from the 6th century before Common Era comprehend, let alone describe, such complex and interconnected systems unless his perception was temporarily lifted from his own era and placed into a state of timeless awareness? Daniel's experiences provide an even more explicit case. He served in the courts of Babylonian kings, yet his most profound insights came through visions that detailed the rise and fall of empires with chilling accuracy. He foresaw the succession of Babylonian, Medo-Persian, Greek, and Roman powers, their conflicts and characteristics described in symbolic language that historians later found to be startlingly precise. In one famous episode, he interprets a mysterious message from a disembodied hand that writes on a palace wall, a message predicting the immediate fall of the Babylonian king. Daniel did not deduce this from political analysis. He read words that spelled out a future event already fixed in a higher reality. His own prayers were answered by the angel Gabriel, who provided a timeline for the coming of a Messiah, a prophecy that would be measured and debated for centuries. These accounts suggest the prophets were not guessing. They were accessing a vantage point where the future was already history. Their minds, often in states of deep trance, fasting, or prayer, became conduits for a consciousness that exists in what we might call the eternal now. This was not magic, it was a form of divine time transcendence, a temporary gift of perception that allowed them to see the tapestry of time from the perspective of the weaver. The ultimate expression of this is the Book of Revelation, a text that claims to be a revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. Its author, John, describes being in the Spirit on the Lord's day and witnessing a series of vivid, often terrifying, visions that span from the 1st century to the end of the age. He sees multitudes of beasts, plagues, and a final new heaven and new earth. The book is a dense fabric of symbols with 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls of wrath unfolding in a sequence that has been interpreted as both literal future history and a timeless allegory of spiritual struggle. For those who view it as prophecy, it is the most detailed map of the future ever provided, a direct transmission from a divine source that exists outside of time. For others, it is a profound exploration of altered states of consciousness where the human brain, under extreme spiritual stress, can experience a collapse of temporal sequencing and perceive the entire arc of cosmic conflict in a single, overwhelming vision. The common thread is the experience of timelessness, whether through divine intervention or the peak potential of human consciousness. These biblical figures seem to have stepped outside the river of years and looked upon its entire course. Their accuracy, their detailed symbolism that later found historical parallels, challenges the idea that the future is unwritten. Instead, it suggests that from a higher dimension, the entire story is already complete, and that certain individuals under certain conditions can be granted a glimpse of the final pages. What does it mean for our own journey through time if the destination is not only known but has already been described? Our journey through 25 ancient mysteries reveals a truth echoing across every civilization. From the cosmic cycles of the Hindu sages to the timeless dreaming of the Australian Aboriginal peoples, humanity has never seen time as a simple one-way street. These stories, whether they are fragments of a lost science or profound spiritual insights, all point to a single, unifying desire, our deep and abiding need to break free from the relentless present. We have always longed to reclaim the past, to glimpse the future, and to find our place within the great turning wheel of the ages. These myths are more than just tales. They are a testament to the unquenchable human spirit, a spirit that refuses to be bound by the clock and the calendar. They challenge us to look beyond our linear existence and consider a universe where all moments are connected, where the past is not lost and the future is not hidden, but merely waiting for us to learn how to see. Which of these ancient visions of time travel speaks directly to you? Does the Norse world tree, with its roots in different eras, capture your imagination? Or perhaps the Taoist immortal, stepping effortlessly between the centuries, feels closer to the truth? Share your own thoughts in the comments below, and if you are ready to continue exploring history's greatest secrets, be sure to subscribe for our next journey into the unknown.